Okay, I had a request to use the microphone this time because there's a big buzz from the next room, which is great. I can't believe the turnout today. Ian and I are just really amazing. It's awesome. Okay, so here I am.
There's no such thing.
Here I am again in front of you. So I'm introducing something that Jim Brain and I've been working on for a little bit. So this is just me doing the PowerPoint part. So this is, some of you have seen this opening title a few times. This is the VIC20 MIDI project. Alright, so what are we doing here? So the goals of this project were to bring the VIC20's distinctive sound and make it available to electronic musicians. So it's even got a slightly more retro sound than the Commodore 64. It has a nice warm tone, I quite like it. And this is a way to add it to the repertoire for electronic musicians. So this will enable it to be integrated with synthesizers, sequencers, and basically any MIDI device. So MIDI, for those of you who aren't music folks, is the musical instrument digital interface. It's a standard for connecting computers and synthesizers with a very simple protocol. So the MIDI has been around for 30 years. There was a fascinating demo at the Electronic Music Conference in Europe last year where they had an iPad talking MIDI to a Commodore 64. So why not? Spanning the 30 years right there. So a bit of history. So sometime in the 80s, I haven't been able to find the exact date, Electronics, the Maplin magazine, published schematics for a VIC20 MIDI interface that you could build yourself at home. And we did a bit of research and found that there really weren't any MIDI interfaces ever released commercially for the VIC. So this was obviously a niche that had to be filled. So fast forwarding a couple decades, 2006, a couple of folks in Montreal, David Viens and Francois Leville, they built a prototype based on the Maplin schematics. But they did the hardware but never finished the software. They just had it sketched out to prove that it works and never moved past that point. So in 2009, I was chatting with Rob Adlers and Sid Bolton, and we were talking about this. Well, there's all these MIDI devices coming out for the 64, which is great, but what about the VIC? It's kind of like the sound. We searched and searched, and a little later, I found out about the project that the guys on the Denial forums were putting together. So I contacted them and said, are you doing anything with it? And they said, no, but we have our prototype, you're welcome to take it and play with it. So they sent me this. And it certainly worked, but that's not something you're going to mass produce. So in 2009, I approached Jim Brain about how would we go about manufacturing some of these. I think there's going to be some demand for this. Let's do a small production run. So the prototypes and the code evolved for an undisclosed number of years. So 2011, you can see it's now got the addition of a different UART chip and the all-important rubber bands to hold it together. 2012, showing it in, that's Chicago, I believe. And then Jim made up his own prototype to test out a new design with a couple of extra features that he'll talk about. So that's 2013. And where are we now? 2015 with a finished board. Woo! That's all Jim, that's all Jim. So using the VIC20 as a MIDI instrument is kind of interesting. So there's 4 voices available on the VIC20. You have alto for your low, tenor for the medium, and then soprano for the high. And there's also a noise channel, which is good for sound effect and so on, explosions in games and so on. But you can also use it for percussion instruments. And then there's a dedicated register for volume. These cute graphics are taken directly out of the VIC20 user guide. They're square wave output, and they have different ranges. They're different octaves. There's some overlap, which causes which makes mapping notes kind of interesting. So here's what the software does currently. So we've got 1 MIDI channel per voice. So channel 1 is your alto, 2 is your tenor, 3 is your soprano, and then MIDI channel 4 is for noise. Channel 5 is a polyphony mode, so this lets you play multiple notes at the same time. And so it just does a simple round robin through those 3 voices. But the octave range is different on those 3 voices, so you get some really interesting effects as you do that. And you can set the volume through what's called a controller, a continuous controller in MIDI speak. So controller number 7 sets your volume. And then it responds very much like any other MIDI instrument, note on and note off, turn your notes on and off. We've also added something under controller number 1. This lets you poke directly into the VIC's memory for controlling that voice, for the frequency of that voice. So you can get some neat effects that way. MIDI has something called running status, where it just, instead of sending the command every time, it just gives you updates. Supports that. And we have different lookup tables. So the frequencies are ever so slightly different between the PAL model and the NTSC model, but you only have 127 steps, which means you can't exactly hit the various notes. So an A sharp is actually just a little bit sharp and so on. So some guys, again, on the denial forums, put together a VIC20 specific lookup table that does not map to any scale that we use, but it's all internally mathematically consistent and sounds pretty good. And you set that through bank select. So a couple of things left to do, software-wise. So it also does MIDI out, so you can use the VIC20 to control your synthesizer, and vice versa. But right now that only does 1 note at a time. That needs to be upgraded so you can do multi-notes. There's support for something called VISNUTS waveforms. This was back in 2006, I believe. This guy in Finland discovered that if you do really, shall we say, unnatural things to the registers in the VIC20 memory, you can modify that square wave and get all kinds of really crazy buzzing sounds out of it. And this was discovered, like 25 years after the VIC20 came out. So I do have support for that in the code, but it's not 100% reliable yet. So that's an area that needs some work. And polyphony mode I haven't tested too much. Now why do I mention that? Because the software is available on GitHub so that the community can add to it as they see fit. So the code's grown beyond what one person can manage, so certainly looking for some help in beta testers. So the software is 6502 assembler. It's cross-compiled using DASM on a Windows PC. Code is open source, MIT license. The MIT license basically means do what you like, but please give us credit. And I've set up a forum for developers and users. So you go to jammingsignal.com, click forums. And at this point, hand to you for the other features.
Yep. So I'm going to take responsibility for the fact that it's taken a significant number of years to get to where we are. So it's my fault. Leaf said, "Hey, wouldn't it be neat if we could put the actual code on the unit itself, so I didn't have to load it from somewhere else?" Well, it's always a danger when you tell a hardware designer that you would like one more feature, right? So this is a problem. So, and as you saw a couple slides back, let me see if I can get back to the slide right here. Whoops. Yeah, right there. So the one on the bottom is Eric in the room? Eric Kudson? He must be in the other room. Anyway, I had him wire this up based on some specification I have. You can see it's kind of messy, right? And so one of the things was this had support for some additional ROM and some additional RAM for cool things you might want to do with this MIDI cartridge. But from a manufacturing standpoint, it was getting kind of expensive to do what was on that board right there. And so one of the things I was trying to do is I wanted to make sure that you have the capabilities that we want, but the product's not going to be priced so high that only 10 people ever buy one, right? So there was some actual work that I was trying to do to kind of get the price down, and then there was this kind of pseudo sort of a feature, maybe just a one-liner that Leif threw out saying, "Hey, it would be nice if we could put the ROM on there," and of course he didn't know that sort of started me off in another direction. But I will go back here to the features. The other one I wanted to do is, people may or may not know this, but MIDI is basically RS-232 at a specific BPS rate. 31250 is the actual bit rate for MIDI. So There's also, except for the user RS-232 cartridge, the VIC1011C or whatever that was used with the VIC20 and then with the C64, as far as I know, there's not been an RS-232 cartridge for the VIC20. And so since this already has all the pieces necessary, I thought it would be interesting for us to have a true RS-232 serial cartridge for the VIC20 as well. So part of the design includes on this, whoops, that's impressive, isn't it? Yep. So let me get rid of that and he'll be plugging this thing in here pretty soon. We'll hope he gets back here before it shuts down. So if you see right here in the top left-hand corner, you'll see an RS-32 connector, as well as MIDI in, out, and through up along the top. And then the other thing is this big chip in the bottom right here is my attempt to kind of reduce the cost of this unit so that it's actually going to be economical. So the price point for this is, I'm hoping for it to be around the $50, $60 range. So, not a $100 unit, definitely something down in there. And as Leif said, it is ready to be produced. What'd you say? Well, I don't know that I have a presence in Canada, so if you can buy it here, and then you don't have, we'll just hand right over, and you can tell whatever Canada IRS you want to tell Canada IRS. I'm going to let you take care of that. Anyway, so go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead. The other thing that it has is so the UART can be set just like the regular SwiftLink or Turbo 232 cartridges. You've got the same kind of features. And then in a little bit, I'll just talk very briefly about this thing here at the bottom called Ultimim, because that's the second part of the demo here. But this has the ability to add. It has extra RAM and extra ROM on the cartridge itself. There it went. It has extra RAM and extra ROM on the cartridge itself. So with the program that Leif has created, you can flash that particular program to the VIC MIDI cartridge, and then every time you boot it up, you'll have MIDI capabilities right at your fingertips. You won't have to load it in from an SD drive. Sorry. Yep, just head it off. I'll let you start it back up. But without further ado, as soon as he gets it up here, probably the proof is in the pudding is listening to it, and so it's time for a demo.
So also in my to-do list, I guess you could add a better GUI. But so the screen, it's just very functional, showing you what the data is coming in. So at the top is the raw MIDI data, and so FE is the active sense. So this MIDI adapter is just continuously sending a hey, I'm here. And then there's the values that are currently being spat out by voices 1, 2, 3, 4 respectively. Volume, which is global. Bank, again, is the different lookup tables for the different scales. And it's auto-detected that this is an NTSC VIC, and it's defaulted to that. And my laptop is being slow, so.
VIC20's booted up faster.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a random question here. For the Commodore VICs, how do you find out what video you're in?
There's a register somewhere in Zero Page that you can consult, and it has one value for NTSC, one other value for PAL.
Oh, there it is. You can bring it back up. But while we're bringing it up, one other thing I was going to say is the Maplin interface that we talked about earlier in the presentation. When Leif and I first talked about mass producing this interface, one of the challenges with the current interface is back in the 80s when Electronics Now or whatever it was created that initial interface, they used a UART that was very common at the time called the 6850, right? 6850 very common, it's used on a lot of the 6800 style machines, Coco and so forth. But it's not that common anymore. It tends to be somewhat expensive, and there was no real reason to make it support 6850 because there was no existing cartridges for it to emulate. So one of the first things we did in this project is we switched to another UART, which is much easier to attain. So right now it has a 16450 in it, which is The number's not all important, but the key is it's very easy to get those, and they're very plentiful. The same kind of chip that's in IBM PC. So in any event, it is very easy to. It's a little bit easier to manufacture the product because we have the same. We have an easy to find chip as opposed to a 6850 that's hard to find. Sounds like we're up.
Okay. Oh, turn the mic. Okay, so this is just a little ditty I put together at like 1 in the morning after a couple Red Bulls, so it's a little schizophrenic, but it shows off the various features and capabilities, and I hope you enjoy.
It's awesome.
That's the 9 Inch Nails remix.
So, mine's not going to be nearly as interesting as Leif's because he's got sound, sorry. I know. But his was really cool, and I kind of feel bad that I made him wait this long to get an actual product out to market. But, so I told you that the VIC mid cartridge has a capability in it called Ultimim. And so I'm going to tell you a little about Ultimim right now. Obviously, it's got a really cool name. So, there you go. So the initial goals, as I indicated here, was to add cartridge capabilities to the VIC MIDI cartridge, right? That was its whole goal. He has an 8K program, and I thought would be really neat to get it stuck on there and have it not be able, or have it be able to be updated from the VIC itself. So people didn't have to be shipping a ROM all over the place. You know, hey, Leaf came up with a better version of this MIDI capability. Now I'm going to have to ship my EEPROM back and have you put a new version in. So that was the whole idea of putting this in. That was the initial goal. As I said last time, and you all laughed about it, and it was probably worthwhile, good for a good laugh. It didn't stay there, right? So now I've ended up with, these are the final goals. So program configurable ROM capabilities and RAM capabilities for the VIC20. And so this is the feature list for this product. So there's been a number of RAM expansions over the years. I think this is pretty much, you know, I'd be surprised if you can find more things to do with this. So for RAM 1, 2, and 3, which are 3 places in the VIC20, 3K that's at the bottom of the memory map, block 1, 2, 3, and 5, which are 8K blocks that are sitting up Most of your cartridges are mapped into block 5. Some of them are mapped into other blocks, but those are 8K chunks in the memory map. You could put ROM or RAM there. And then two places that don't typically have ROM or RAM in them, which is IO2 and IO3. Normally those are called that way because they're normally where IO cartridges sit. You can put RAM or ROM in each one of those locations, right? With the cartridge, you can do so under computer control. Then you have read and write capabilities for each area. So you can put ROM there and have it read-write. You can put nothing there. You can have RAM there and have it be read-only, or you can put put RAM there and have it be read-write. So you got 4 different options. And then you have switches on the back of the unit, which you can control. You can use whatever you want for. So if you have some special program and you want to use the switches, you got them. You got a little LED on the back. You can do whatever you want with. Couple neat features. You can hide all the registers, so you get with things set up the way you want them. Like you want a 16K RAM expansion, you set the registers up. You can hide the registers, and then nobody will know the difference. Right? The other thing you can do is you can unhide them. So that's at the bottom there. By what's called magic reads. So if you send special reads, special read commands or peek commands in BASIC from special locations in the memory map, the registers will unhide themselves. So they're hidden and then they're unhidden if you wish. And then the final feature is that you can do an actual hard reset like some of the other cartridges have done. You can actually reset the entire machine from the cartridge, but the cartridge itself will not reset. So if you set up all your registers the way you want them, you can hard reset the machine, and then you can have all the registers set up even though the machine's done a hard reset, resetting everything on the serial bus and so forth. So this is what the unit looks like, the one that's going to production. You'll see that it's quite a small unit. It only has a couple chips on it. The first one on the left is first one on the left is the RAM. The second one is the ROM, and the third one is a programmable logic device, which makes everything possible at a reasonable price range. This particular unit that's going to production has 8 megabyte of ROM and 1 megabyte of RAM. So basically this has more RAM than a 512K RAM expansion unit for the 64, right? So I can't imagine, I want to see somebody that's going to come up with something that's going to use all of the RAM and then need a little bit more. But that's I got the wrong thing at the bottom. It's not the VIC MIDI. This is just the Ultimum only. But the unit you saw, well, okay, that's why. There it is. So this has got the same functionality in it, but the ROM and RAM capabilities are a little bit smaller. This unit has 512K of ROM and 128K of RAM. So a little bit more capability if you buy the full unit, but this one's got plenty of room for, let's see, 512K is 100 or 64 images, I believe 64K images, and of course 128K RAM you can map in whenever you want. But probably the most important thing is to show that I have one of the units in VIC right now, and so if I can switch over to it and turn the unit on, I think you'll like what you see as far as one of the things I wanted to note, actually, before I turned over is there was an older cartridge that never made it production. It was called the VIC Flash VIC Flash plug-in, which was the name of the cartridge. It was never produced. It was designed by an individual by the name of Marco Michela. Some of you may know that name. He's over in Finland. And so when I announced that I was working on this particular unit, Marco said, hey, I've got some software that I wrote for an older cartridge that never made it to production, and I think with a few tweaks, we could make it work for this. So he actually has been working on the software, and so what I'm going to show you today is he's written some software to allow a menuing system and a bunch of software titles to be loaded on the MIDI cartridge, and of course it flashes itself. I actually copied all the files onto this unit that I'm going to show you here. I copied them over about a half an hour ago, and it's pretty full. I would be surprised if you find something in this list, or I would be surprised to not have something in the list that everybody knows about. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. I'm going to flip over the source here. Let's see. Video. Let's see if it's found it here. Okay, so the thing's not all that great as far as the reproduction is concerned, but you've got, this is a very simplistic screen. We're going to have to clean it up and make it look a bit prettier. This is part of the development effort. But you've got game cartridges, games, tool cartridges, and demo cartridges, and I'm going to
I'm going to see if I can flip this around very quickly so I can more easily. There we go. So here's all your games. Any 16 gay game you want, and there's a whole bunch of them. And you can go back. 8K games, quite a few of those. And of course you've got your 3K games, which we don't have much of, your unexpanded VIC games, and then of course any games that you have in BASIC do the same thing, and you got all your, let's bring it back up. And then you got all the cartridges all on the list, and then in addition you've got. Looks like my gremlins. Your gremlins have been coming over and playing with me now, but this has got Jiffy DOS in it, and so I'm going to try to get all these to. So there's one of the games, right? So evidently I've got a couple of them that are not working all as correctly, but it's not even half full right now. This is an 8 meg cartridge, and he's put all the games that he could find out on Zimmers.net, and so they're all listed there. And then one of the other things you can do is, if you start the unit up, actually there's a reset button on the bottom. I keep forgetting to use it, but if you just press one of the keys, this is the 8 key, and so if you press the 8 key, then it comes up with our RAM expansion. This would be 28K would be all, I think it would be 3 of the 4 banks full of RAM. You can also set it up for 3K. So I'll bring it up here. So there's a 3K. If you hit the 3 button, you've got your 3K RAM expansion. And if you hit the shift and the number, so shift 3 brings up your 3K RAM expansion, but it also hides the registers. So now nobody can tell that this unit has a configurable RAM expansion in there, except if you go ahead and unhide the registers later on. So the registers are stuffed up at the top of IO3. There are 16 registers to set, so you can set them all from BASIC if you want. This does not require machine language to do. Each register has 2 bytes to be able to select what bank it's in. And so each one of the blocks of memory can be set to any bank in the entire memory space. So you have 8 megabyte, which is 1,000 8K locations in the flash memory RAM, or flash memory, and you can put each 8K anywhere you want. Each of the 8K slots, block 1, block 2, block 3, and block 5, you can put them anywhere in that 8 megabyte of ROM that you want, or 1 megabyte of RAM. And you can map them to the same location. So technically you can map block 1, block 2, block 3, and block 5 to the same location in memory if you wish, so that you can do some really interesting things there. Or if you want to do like a multitasking solution or what, you can, every 60th of a second, you can map different memory into the same block of same memory location in the VIC20. So it's more than just having all the RAM, it's having all the RAM and being able to configure where in the larger address space it is. It's basically the cartridge functions as a memory management unit, and you can select where in virtual memory you want your real memory to show up. And so the cartridges are filling up part of the ROM, but part of the ROM is free for everybody else to use, and of course the RAM is all open for everybody to use. So this unit, as well as VIC-MIDI, are going into production, should be available earlier next year. Like I said, this unit has 8 meg of ROM and 1 meg of RAM. The VIC-MIDI has the same capabilities, the same registers. It's just less memory on the VIC-MIDI cartridge, because there's some other stuff on the VIC-MIDI cartridge taking up some of the room. And I can't think of any limitations on the unit. The only thing is things are located in 8K chunks. So like RAM 1, 2, and 3 takes up like a portion of an 8K chunk, but not the whole thing. And IO 2 and 3 are each 1K each, and they take up the top end of one of the 8K chunks. So everything's mapped in as an 8K bank into the larger memory map. So, and like I said, you've got all the games you'd ever want right here. Everything you'd ever want. in there. So, and I don't even know, some of these games are PAL only games, so you'll have to have a PAL machine for this to work on, or else you won't be able to play them. So, looks like Centipede to me. So, any questions? Yeah.
So with memory in the RS-232, you could potentially build a terminal program to connect to the internet?
Correct. In fact, I noticed the utility cartridge spot is not working on this one right now because it looks like I got a problem in the memory or the flash image that I put in there. But once I fix that, there's a 40 column terminal program that's on in my in the list here. And so if that was loaded on the VIC-MIDI cartridge and it knew about and that one doesn't because it's probably doing off the user port, but if somebody modified it slightly to use the new UART chip, then you could have a 40 column terminal emulator plus the actual RS-232 function all on the VIC-MIDI cartridge, just right there. Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Yep. Huh? What do I use to what?
Write this software.
This software is written in, well, this game. I don't know what that game is, but there's a bunch of basic games on the list here. But this particular menu program is written in machine language, but you don't have to. I mean, you can write it anything you want. The only things you have to do is, and I probably should have put up the memory map here, a register list, but I ran out of time. There's 16 registers. 6 sets, 12 of those registers are just high and low bytes for what bank you want the memory in. So those are easy. You can poke those with whatever number you want. The other registers are pretty easy. One of the registers is a read-only register, and it can tell you what cartridge is running. So if you look at the VIC-MIDI, it'll say 18. It's cartridge 18, and Ultimate will say cartridge 17. So it's just an ID. And then some of the other ones are like how to reset the machine and stuff like that, and they're little bits. But you can function, all those things can be driven from BASIC. You don't have to drive them from ML if you don't want to. No problem. Yeah?
Can we pre-order?
Yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the website with the price, and go ahead and open it up for pre-orders probably either tonight or tomorrow when I get the picture of it up there. So you can pre-order. When they come in, I'll ship them out.
What's your web address?
That's good. Thank you very much, Mr. Closing Question kind of guy. IRM is my marketing arm, right? Go4retro.com, the number 4 retro.com is the website. The store is linked off the main site. Go there and you can see all the other cool things that are there. These will be soon in pre-order, and then, like I said, it takes the boards are I actually raced the board. It was in Iowa as I was leaving to come here, so I missed it. But I have one of the boards. I'm going to solder it up, just do a final check, make sure everything's working for the final run, and then release the board to manufacturing. It takes about 35 business days to do that. It ends up being about a month and a half clock time. So start them now, probably be the first or about this 3rd week of January they'll ship. So I won't quite make the Christmas season, but if you go ahead and pre-order, you can give yourself a little piece of paper that says, "Hi, honey, give me this for Christmas Day." And then when you get it, you say, "Ooh, yay! I'm going to get this. I got to wait a couple weeks to get it." So I should be around 3rd week of January that I can ship them out.
How much, sir?
So both the units, this one, the Ultimim is about 60, and I believe the VIC-MIDI is either between $50 and $60. I don't know where I've been continuing to try to shave some dollars off the cost as I get, part of that is, part of building these things is, it's one thing, as you saw earlier when Leaf had the breadboard up, right? It's one thing to build them, and to get them to work. But it's another one to get them so that you can actually sell them at an attractive price and get some profit out of them. So that's what I've continued to do over the last, and it's taken too long for this because it's one of those things that sat on the bench too long. But trying to keep the price down so that everybody can enjoy them as opposed to they sitting on the shelf in my basement where nobody's going to enjoy them at all. So that's one of the things. So I would assume I'm going to hedge my bets and say it's probably going to end up being about $55. So buy both, right? So a little bit over $100 and you get both, one of each, you're good. Good to go. Any other questions? You guys can come up. Huh?
Who wired up the prototype?
I told you weren't in the Eric's in the back. We should all look and wave at Eric. So Eric wired up that one prototype. And that was a maze of wires that he got put together there. And that's the thing. This is as Leif indicated with these products, it takes like 4 or 5 iterations before you get to the unit you're going to actually produce. But yes, Eric, you got your name in lights on that. So you guys can play with it I've got a spot set up here. Some of the stuff I'm selling. I'll have this up on the screen, up on the LCD screen over there, and you can play around with it and see what works, and you can play with it in BASIC if you want and see what all's going there. So with that, I appreciate looking at the VIC MIDI cartridge, Leif and I, and appreciate looking at Ultimim, and hopefully you all buy one. Thanks.